Alright, working on an Audi A7. There is a rear cargo cover that sits back here and basically keys into the stationary piece when the hatch is closed. So the way that this attaches, there's two hooks on the back of it and then some spring tabs, one on either side. So the two tabs key into those spots there, and then these tabs actually line up with the little nub that's sticking out right there. So what can happen when you take this on and off is these can break. So you can see this one sheared off flush. So what I'm going to do is pull this piece off, pull that part, re-engineer it, and then put it back on. Alright, to start off you have to remove the rear cover. This piece, you actually can just take a pry tool like this and pry here. I already started it, and then you'll pull on it, it comes off. So there's actually just some clips here that hold it on to the piece. Next, you will open up the cover here, and there are two Torx 25s there and there. You'll take those out, and then you will get the same pry tool and you will run it along the edge of this entire panel. So there are clips around the entire perimeter, and there are some near the bottom as well. The biggest thing to note is you want to be careful on these edges here. So there's one plastic clip here and then one on the right side over here as well. So what I did was I started on this back edge, tilted it down towards me and rotated it down. And then once I got all the outside clips done, I pulled this edge out with the pry tool just by getting it in here once I had a gap in there. So that's the safest way to do it without having to break that plastic clip there. So this is what it looks like with the cover off. There are the standard metal clips around the entire perimeter. They're a little bit further inboard, so that's why you have to pry full 360 degrees, because they have them around the entire panel. One thing to note is there's these little rubber pieces. They're just kind of slipped over these edges. Those are to keep noise down on the panel when the car is moving and vibrating, that sort of thing. They do just pop off, so I had a couple pop off because they stayed stuck to the metal. Just make sure you keep track of those and pop them all back on, otherwise you'll have a rattle when you put the panel back on. One thing to note is the outer edges. So there is a clip right here, and then one over here, and that was that area that I warned you about. Basically, it's trying to clip in right to this area. You're going to have to pull out a little bit on it in order for the panel to pop off on those two corners. I would leave these areas for last just because that's the back side of the panel. So next thing you have to do is take this bottom cover off. You are going to need to take a tool like this and pry just underneath the bottom here. Reason being is there's some clips, one here and here, that clip into the side pieces, and then three in the middle that are actually in there pretty snug. There is also some plastic tabs that hold it onto the metal body as well, so you actually have to pull from the bottom and rotate up towards you. The clips on the sides are on the center, but on the middle area they're actually at the bottom. So they're on the bottom edge there, so if you don't pry near the bottom, they will not pop out. Outer ones were a lot easier to pop out, but these ones I had to put a significant amount of force on them to get them to actually come out. And they might stay in the car just because the amount of force that's required. They just pop in to these little grooves here, like that. But yeah, there's 5 total, 3 in the middle, and then 1 on each side holding in these side covers. As far as the side cover goes, the clips are actually on the inside edge. So when you pry, you need to pry this direction. So put a pry tool here and pry like that. You need to try and push it this direction because they're actually popped in at a slight angle rather than coming straight out at you. Be careful down here because there is a cover that's just snap fit into the side here to cover the entire lift mechanism. And then once you have all 3 of those clips undone and you've pulled them the direction I just pointed, you can pull down on the cover here. Just keep in mind that that little clip is still in place. It's actually held in the bottom with a spring clip as well. So undo that and then you can take the cover right off. Alright, so here we are at the bench. Here's my broken piece. So this is held on. There's actually a Torx fastener right here. It's a Torx 20. So what you have to do, undo the Torx, Watch that, just goes straight through the clip. And then, all right, so in order to get that piece out, you're gonna need some sort of flathead tool. So just a flathead screwdriver is fine. This is the little flathead pry bar. So I'm gonna take the pry bar and put it in just above the clip. There's actually just blank space there. So let me zoom in here. This is where I have it located. I am in between the clip and the back where it bottoms out. See how there's a little tab there? So I'm right in between there. So then what you can do is when you pry on this screwdriver, it pops the piece out just like that. So actually you just watched that real time. So yeah, the screw is just going through the side there, and that's the broken piece. So funny enough, I actually bought a second one of these, the cheapest one I could find on eBay, purely to get some reverse engineering going here. So I did the same thing, pulled the piece off. So this is what it's supposed to look like versus the broken piece. The one that I bought on eBay is brown, so that's why it's brown. There's a bunch of different interior colors you can get for these cars. But either way, I'm going to use this to 3D scan and then recreate the part. Alright, so I'm starting off by scanning the part using a blue laser scanner from Creality. I have it on a base that has markers stuck to it, so that way I don't have to put any markers on the part itself. You can see me flip the part over and scan the other side. I typically do this for most parts just because most parts it's hard to get the whole thing in one view. And then so what I do is I take these two scans. They're a little dirty, which is what I'm cutting out here. So I'm just trying to clean up some of that noise. I'm going to clean them up and then actually merge them. So this noise, I've had this come on and off, and I think it's honestly a setting or the fact the part is so dark. So here I go merging the parts together. You can see there's a little bit of a seam and it's not like a perfect scan here, so I'm trying to use some different settings to smooth it out a bit. Once I get that done though, it looks good enough to where I'm going to export it to the actual 3D printing software. So I'm using Bamboo Studio. I get the part oriented and then I use the Windows repair function built into here. I set the material, bring it to the front of the build plate, and I'm going to print it out of ASA right now, CFASA. So I do have to get the printer warmed up. So I get it sliced and I set the support so that there's a tree support on there so it's not just floating in space. And then I'm going to send it to the printer to print the part, and I do have a time lapse here just to show you how quick it goes through it. Alright, so here's the part that I scanned. And then here's the model. This is just 3D printed out of ASA CF from 3DX Tech. Not the greatest model just because of the noise we had in the scan, but it still turned out good enough that you can see it is dang near identical. So I'm going to put this in now and then we'll see how everything works out. So this pops in here like so. So you can see even with the 3D scan and basically no touch up, it already looks pretty darn good. So obviously I could clean this up. That circle is definitely not a full circle there. So what I'll probably do is just before I share the model, clean up the model in Fusion. But this is enough to get me by for now in my car. Alright, so here it is installed. The screw went right through the model, no problem, didn't crack the part or anything. And I did print it in that side orientation just because the load that's going to be on it will be in that direction and I wanted the best chance of strength. You do not want to print this standing up because you'll just shear it right off the same way it did with the injection molded part. I'm hoping long term I may end up printing this out of like a polycarbonate just because that will be a lot stronger. If you did have like a polypropylene or something, you could do that, but honestly, just judging by the looks of this, I would be willing to bet that this is a glass fiber nylon. It just doesn't say anything on it what it's made out of, but you can see how there's kind of that gritty texture to it. That's typically something you'll see in a glass-filled part. So my guess is some sort of glass-filled nylon or similar, just because it has to be higher strength with the load of that bracket on the back. So I would recommend glass-filled nylon or polycarb just because those are higher strength materials. Let's get this back in the car and see how it looks. All right, and here's the finished product reinstalled. So we've got the regular injection molded part over here, you can see, and then we'll go over to this side, the 3D printed part there. And you can't even tell really that it's 3D printed because it's so buried in this car. So there we go, complete start to finish reverse engineering of that part. And then now if it ever breaks again, you can just print another one for less than $1 material and keep on going. Thanks for watching.